Hello, and welcome to In the Kitchen with Brett Thorne, a food service industry podcast by Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Hospitality. I'm your host, Senior Food and Beverage Editor Brett Thorne, wishing you a happy Filipino American History Month. That's what October is, among many other things. And I am celebrating by interviewing a delightful Filipino American by the name of Billy Dec, whose mother is Filipina and whose father is of some sort of East European extraction. I honestly don't know what, but that's why his last name is Dec and not something that sounds more Filipino. You might have noticed I said Filipina and Filipino, which, that sort of phrasing works the same way that Hispanic terminology works. Latino, Latina, Latinx, if you want to include both without specifying a gender, you can do that. But there's something a little bit quirky about the way people and things from the Philippines are described in English. And I want to talk about it very briefly because I know you don't care that much, but I'm an editor, so I care a little bit. I used to work for a regional Asian newspaper based in Bangkok called Asia Times. It lasted for about a year and a half in the mid-90s until the economy of Southeast Asia collapsed. But we had serious naming protocols and use of terminology because we had to refer to a bunch of very disparate countries, and we had to know how to politely refer to everyone and everything in them. We had a multicultural staff, including several Filipinos. So if we got it wrong, I think they would have told us, even though they were very polite people and they might have said, well, it's fine. At any rate, if you are describing somebody from the Philippines, that is a Filipino or a Filipina, spelled with an F. However, things that are from the Philippines, such as, fruit, a cabinet, whatever, from the Philippines, that is described as Philippine, with a PH. So, for example, although the cuisine now in the United States is called Filipino cuisine, I've been trying and failing and admitting this failure to refer to the cuisine as Philippine cuisine because grammatically that is correct. Again, the people are Filipino or Filipina. I haven't seen Filipinx, but maybe that's a thing, and if people want to be referred to that way, obviously I'm happy to oblige. At any rate, the cuisine should be referred to as Philippine, in my opinion. And if you disagree strongly, email me or contact me via social media. You can find me. Just Google me. It comes right up. Philippine cuisine actually has an interesting kind of position in the United States. It's been trending a little bit, but not compared to other Asian cuisines such as Thai, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese obviously, but Chinese is already a very well-established cuisine in the United States. And this it's interesting, and it illustrates how it's the way that cuisines become trendy is complex. Often people will say, well, the immigrants come and they bring their own cuisine, and so then it becomes popular, and sometimes that's true with, say, Italian cuisine, a lot of Italian Americans, but it's not like Irish cuisine ever got super trendy. I mean, it's sort of embedded in the culture of Irish Americans, but people never went out and said, let's go have Irish food, except maybe on the days right around St. Patrick's Day. And compared to those more popular cuisines, there are a lot more Filipinos. See what I did there? Filipinos in the United States. According to the latest U.S. Census data, there were 4.4 million Filipino Americans in the United States. That compares to about 300,000 Thai people, 419,000 Japanese, 2.3 million Vietnamese, just under 2 million Koreans. There are a lot of Chinese people in the United States, just as there are a lot of Chinese people everywhere, pretty much. There are 5.2 million Chinese. But if you compare that to the Philippine population, again, Filipino American in the United States, 4.4 million. And I realize I just messed up. I should have said Filipino American and not Philippine American. Language is hard. There's a lot more Chinese food than Filipino food in the United States. And a lot more Thai and Japanese and Korean food. So my point is simply that the way that different cuisines become popular in the United States is complicated and nuanced. And Billy Dec is certainly working to expand the profile of Philippine cuisine with his restaurant Sunda New Asian, which is expanding. Recently opened in Tampa, a market that Billy Dec is very enthusiastic about. I talked to him in Nashville, where there's also a Sunda New Asian, and he seems to be really enjoying spending time in that city. Most of his career has been in Chicago, but he's now becoming a multi-city restaurant magnate with a lot to say and a lot of observations about who we are and where we're going. And he also has a documentary coming out about his own heritage. It's called Food Roots, and it traces his travel and search for his culinary origins throughout the Philippine Islands. And that's enough hearing from me and my own semantics and issues with pronunciation and classification of things from the Philippines. I would like you now, please, to enjoy my interview with Mr. Billy Dec. Is that a real background that I'm seeing, or are you in Chicago?
It is a real background. It's a studio that I built in the back of my house to. It's really cool. It's kind of a mess here, but like I can show you. Well, first of all, these are really cool mats from the islands of the Philippines that we kind of grew up taking naps on, and I put them on the ceiling, which is kind of cool. And then I built like this kind of show kitchen. It's still being built, so that I can do cooking segments from home. Because I used to have to, like, when we used to have dinner, lunch, when I was in New York, doing the Today Show and stuff like that. It was awesome, but nowadays I don't always have to leave, and so I could just do it from here, which is kind of cool. But then I don't always get to see people like you. So this is good that we get to catch up.
Yes, it's nice. And what about all those beautiful trees and stuff in the background?
Yeah, so I'm in Nashville, and there are it's one of the things I fell in love with, because I born and raised in the city of Chicago, literally downtown, never had a yard, always on the cement. And when we came out here to open up Sunda, which we opened 15 years ago in Chicago, about 8 years ago, we expanded the concept to Nashville 7.5 years ago. And I just fell in love with all the green and just sort of there's literally animals walking by. And it was just sort of like this cool, different type of almost like a sanctuary. And I was able to take the 55-minute flight to Chicago and be there at any time. And then when COVID happened, it was like super normal to be able to commute and sort of work from a different place. So yeah, so we're here, and then now we're moving. Well, we're not physically moving, but we're opening properties south. So now I'm sort of strategically located in the middle.
So you are the owner of you've been the owner of many things. Currently, Sunda New Asian.
Yes.
Probably other stuff too, right? What else do you have going on in your life, Billy Dec, apart from your movie?
Yeah, so Sunda New Asian is the restaurant concept that we have been expanding. I still have the Underground Cocktail Club, which is sort of a play in a 1920s speakeasy cocktail club, which is very cool in Chicago. And we're opening up in Nashville in March with like a really cool food and beverage menu in the historic Printers Alley, which is the original Broadway, which is amazing. So that's happening in about March. And then we have this really cool, I kind of came up collaborating with a bunch of really great people in the hospitality and creative and entertainment industries. And I created this company in 2018 called COACT. It's a company to act and work together. That's what the word means. And it's all about sort of storytelling, marketing, advertising with really great clients in the food space, but also in lifestyle, luxury, like United Airlines and Maserati, and some fun accounts that we get to play with in the storytelling space. So that one is really fun as well, because a lot of times with restaurants, it's super creative and exciting and personable, but there's a lot of commitment around consistency. And I think I'm sort of wired to a lot of times like to explore inconsistency and explore sort of breaking things and trying things differently, and being a little disruptive and innovative. And a lot of times when you're in a creative agency, you can just be nutty and try things that are, you almost have to try things that are absurd. So that's where I get to really do awesome experimental stuff. So I'm really digging that.
Yeah, I suppose if you did the same ad campaign, for example, over and over again, that would not be great.
Right. And like similar to someone in a restaurant seat, who demands their dish to be the same every single time they come, and they should. I think it'd be weird if people out in the world expected every ad campaign to be the exact same, or else they would reject it. It's actually the opposite. They expect inconsistency as opposed to consistency, which is a cool place to play. If you can play in both, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
And you have, I'm sure, capable people working in your restaurants who know how to do it.
Yeah. I can't do anything. I'm completely useless. I have no skills in both Sunda and COACT. I mean, the most amazing people and leaders are just sort of the driving force. I mean, I definitely took elements from my upbringing, whether it's from the Southeast Asian side with my mom from the islands of Philippines. We were back and forth my entire life. Every time we'd go to the Philippines, we'd stop in other countries, cultures, trying all, the different things we can get our hands on, whether it was in people's homes, restaurants, or street food. And then, of course, that evolution and modernization of sort of that over time really became a lot of what Sunda's about. And then just not having money, working in restaurants as a kid, putting myself through college, law school, and then needing more money and working the late shifts at nightclubs really taught me how to network and communicate and collaborate to make bigger things happen, which is what COACT is. So there's been a lot of maybe the initiation from me, but these days there are real amazing folks that make the magic happen. It's definitely not me.
So how, as a young kid of a Filipina, and I think on your dad's side, you're Eastern European, right? That's why your last name is Dec?
Yes.
Which doesn't sound Filipino at all.
That's right. My mom's maiden name is Bumanglag, which is a very traditional Filipino name. Many Filipino names are sometimes Spanish oriented or other, because there's been a lot of colonizers over time and a lot of influences, which you see not only culturally but from a culinary perspective as well. But yeah, so my mom is from the islands of the Philippines. And you were saying, how does a kid what?
Right. Thank you for letting me finish my question. I tend to get distracted and ask multiple questions at once, and then like, what do you say? So you growing up in Chicago and working in restaurants to make money, and went to law school. I didn't know you went to law school. So if you want to talk about you can, but to finish the sentence, how'd you end up owning restaurants and becoming that kind of an entrepreneur?
Well, they're actually intertwined with the law school story. So started just really interested in the restaurant industry in 6th grade. My parents opened up a Chinese restaurant in an up and coming area in Chicago. And I got to see what it's like working in the COACT, which is actually fascinating because you see people right when they get there and you feel the energy, the anticipation, and then you see them at the end, and they're usually much different. They're either, a little, they're super pleased, or maybe they're not, or they're whatever. And it's just like cool. I was infatuated with whatever happened in the middle. And then so after the COACT, they let me out and do other things, whether it was a busser and whatever. So I used a lot of that to make money and put myself through college. I had to pay for college. And then law school, and became a lawyer eventually. But during law school, I needed more money, and I figured out a way. You weren't really allowed to have jobs in your first year of law school. So my workaround, because I needed money, was that I figured out a way in which to actually open up my own little nightclub in an old defunct pizza restaurant that was going out of business, which is like a worse idea, because then you're an owner of, in the hospitality industry, which is like 1 million jobs instead of one. But somehow I did that, and it really took off. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of things I was really bad at. And operations was one of them at the time, but was really good at networking and marketing, and packed these nightclubs so that every year I was able to open up a new nightclub. And so at the end of law school, became a lawyer. Thank God I passed the bar on the first try, or else I don't think I ever would go back. And I was struggling. I was terrible at being a lawyer and owning nightclubs. I had to choose. I was hospitality or and we had food at the nightclub. So I just was bad at both. I had to choose. And so I had all these great advisors around me, and it was really important to look inside and decide what kind of person I was, and what I really liked and enjoyed and was good at, and all those sorts of things, and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And it came down to, I really liked to make people happy, and I really liked to solve problems quickly. And those were two things that lawyers did not do, but they are two things that hospitality folks did. And so I made a decision to leave my very brief, months, career as a lawyer, and to just solely focus on building a hospitality company. And that's how I began to transition immediately right after that into full-blown restaurants.
What kind of law were you practicing?
I started, thinking I was going to be like some superhero saving people. And, I watched, the OJ trials were going on back in the day. And so I was they had all these law shows that were like super intense. And I thought I was going to maybe be an FBI agent or something like that. But I learned really quickly that, a lot of what lawyers were doing, which is, I'm not knocking lawyers, but I liked value creation. I like making people happy, like I said. So I stayed sort of in this realm of contractual business and real estate law, because I found that I was building value, making people happy, as opposed to arguing.
Well, and also that is the perfect kind of law degree you want if you're running restaurants, I would think. You can read the hell out of a contract or a lease or anything like that.
Yes. And the strategy behind the actual sort of the analysis and then the sort of road forward is always a tough one. It's a tough one for everybody, and it's a tough one to rely on another person, even if they're an attorney. So I think it was very helpful to be able to have an understanding and a point of view and a conversation with a lawyer as to what I really thought needed to happen. And, the world, but also hospitality especially, is riddled with issues, problems, obstacles. And I think being calm in the storm is a really important thing for restaurateurs and other folks, entrepreneurs in general, people in general. Just it's a skill that, is helpful if you can be calm in the storm and sort of analyze. And I really think sort of law school put that pounding on me pretty hard at the worst time in my life, from a, just a family standpoint and other things. it was a pounding that like I don't think I would ever give up, as rough as it was, because it really helped me sort of navigate some really tough waters, which I know everyone's going through. So yeah.
Yes. Well, and being calm, we've had a 3-year storm now going on, and being calm during that is certainly useful. And probably hard for someone like you, because you're a very high energy person. And I imagine also, like many restaurant people, maybe a little easily distracted. I don't want to diagnose you with ADHD, because I'm not able to do that. But a lot of people in the industry are good at multitasking, let's say.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Not always focused on one thing.
Yeah, it was really tough, because when we were shut down, and then of course in cities like Chicago shut down much longer and multiple times than others, it was the worst. It was the worst for everyone. I mean, for me, I thought I could solve this on behalf of, like, you know, our team and maybe so many. I dove into, you know, every single document out there. I dove into everything. I was like, I'm a lawyer, I should figure this out. But it kept changing. It was very confusing. A lot of things were happening. We got looted in Chicago. We, like, you know, family heirlooms were broken. Their security cameras got everything. It was just horrible. And we, you know, just one after the other, you know, buildings were evacuated, pipes burst, everything was ruined in our place. We were shut down, and insurance wouldn't pay because they just figured we'd close anyway. Probably a story that many others have gone through. And you're just sort of stuck. Like you said, a guy like me, I like to be communicative and collaborate and be around folks. And it was like I just felt caged for a moment with a lot of folks depending on us. What I did was I channeled that energy into a new kind of movement that we called Sunda service. And we just started serving the hospitality industry. It started with 100 meals a week, and it got up to 500 a night. I use my background of relationship building, communicating with companies, fundraising, and I started getting money from foundations to, like, buy the product and really, and then our team would, like, donate and do all the work and then go out into the communities and pass it out. Nashville started to recover quickly for the hospitality industry, but their music industry was down. So all the touring ecosystem of stage folks, lighting, songwriters, whatever, we started feeding them weekly. And it still goes on to this day. So, which is cool. I mean, out of really tragic situations, sometimes, you know, blossoms pretty neat things. And, you know, from a business, from a philanthropic standpoint, we're still doing it. We just, you know, brought 150 meals that I grew up on as comfort food from the islands of the Philippines to schools, underserved schools. The month before that, we were out in the park feeding 300 sort of homeless folks and some veterans, and it's just cool stuff. So, I mean, it's just nice to be able to kind of help and storytell. So that came from that. That's how I channeled that energy. And then I also just cut against the grain, man. I was like, at one point, just stopped. I was just tired of fighting fires. And then I stopped doing TV and stuff in 2020. I just decided 21 was a new year. I started again. All of these emails came to me from developers, and I just cut against the grain, started a $20 million fund to open up more Sundas. And that's kind of the road that we're on now. So it sort of was, okay, you know, where is the opportunity in the storm? Because you can't just get beat up and just sit here. So to your point, we try to take the energy and just rewire it into different forms of value and helpfulness. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy looking back. I mean, and there's still the effects, but yeah, we just tried to, you know, and I think I give, you know, I mean, just seeing my mom and my Lola, my grandma from the Philippines, that is in this documentary, by the way, which we should totally talk about, that's coming out. You know, I look at what they've gone through and how they turned this, you know, really tough circumstances that they sort of, you know, always grew up with in the Philippines, and how they sort of, you know, sacrificed so much to come here and to create this opportunity. You know, that really stuck with me, because we were working on the doc during that time. In fact, we were supposed to premiere May 1 of 2020. on PBS nationally for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and it got delayed because we couldn't be in the editing room. So all these things happen, and thank goodness it's all out now, and it's playing in festivals across the country, which is really cool.
Yeah, let's talk about this film, which is called Food Roots, right?
Yeah. I randomly and sadly had two of my last elders die on the same day, and I just dropped everything. In 2019, I just left, and I just went to go learn the recipes of my ancestors, because I felt like I didn't know enough. I know a lot of the greatest hits from, Filipino cuisine that a lot of mainstream folks may or may not have come in contact with, but there are real deep relationships that I never got to really explore. And recipes, family recipes in the Philippines, like so many other things, are passed down through story, which are passed down through relationship. And not being there, being here, one, separated me. But more importantly, I think the pressures of growing up Filipino or ethnic or half in America sort of causes one to try to fit in and try to be part of the mainstream, and in doing so, in whatever's being celebrated at the time, maybe it's pizza bagels or Pop-Tarts or whatever it is, after school snacks. Like, I had different after school snacks that kids sort of made fun of, and you push away, and so that was like sort of a lot of guilt, especially owning restaurants that serve Filipino food and great Filipino food, but not my full-blown recipes of my ancestors. So we went out on that journey. I'd filmed in the Philippines before on some other occasions, and so I grabbed these I call them kids, but like these renegade film crews, and they just followed me, and it turned out all this stuff happened, things that I would never imagine, as most things do if you go back in time and you learn from your family what the recipes are and why it was cooked, what happened at those meals, who did what and when. You start to learn about your heritage, your DNA, and all these amazing things that really gave me a lot more, comfortability, excitement, pride in my identity and who I am. And it's just really an awesome film, because a lot of cool things happen, a lot of bad things happen. But that's life. And I hope you enjoy it. I think it was really cool that I found a Filipina director named Michelle Houseway, who did Matthew Shepard is a friend of mine, and Happy Jail on Netflix, and a bunch of other things. But she grew up Filipino American in the US and knew the journey and knew what those pressures felt like. And then this executive producer who won 3 Oscars, is Doug Blush, was just like, had filmed in Asia and knew great storytelling that had not been told yet from the Philippines, and really emotionally fell in love with this situation that I don't want to spoil, but some really sort of hard things happen, as they do with everyone, and it's just it's a journey story that's really cool, and it's food, it's food leading to your story, your roots, your real identity. And I think if everyone, I was appointed by the president in 2014 to serve as advisor for the president's advisory commission for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and the White House Bullying Prevention Task Force. And when we went and traveled the country with this bullying prevention task force, speaking to kids, we realized that, that abuse of an imbalance of power really had a lot to do with lack of content or content that wasn't really, accurate. And that really caused a lot of unknowns or dislikes or things that played out. And it was really our job, I felt, to start inspiring people to create more content that was very diverse. And what I thought this could do was inspire you and everyone to go, well, what are my ancestor recipes? Like, what is my heritage about related to food? And if I go back in time and I begin to if everyone brought back these colorful stories, I mean, the world would just be, much more colorful and diverse, and there'd be a lot more acceptance and maybe even celebration around difference. And so I think, I hope I'm really happy it worked out, because like a lot of things, including restaurants and dreams in general, they don't always work out. And so for us to finally be premiering at all these film festivals is a really cool thing. And I hope people check it out.
So you said something interesting about bullying and lack of content. And the way that sounds to me is, if you have a sense of where you're coming from, then if someone talks trash about you, you don't like fuck them. Like, you already know who you are and where you come from, so you don't care about them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of good when you do feel comfortable with yourself, or you just know your reality, if you begin to share it, or if we get everyone to share it, then the storyline, the noise becomes more celebratory around colorful diversity, where those that are struggling to find comfort or acceptance are able to feel more comfortable in an environment that is, not black and white, not, in or out, not so divisive, because there's just so much diversity that they begin to say, oh, my differences are part of that, unique celebration as well. So yes, the fact that if we can do that, that's amazing, right? Because you've saved one other person. But if you are, having that sort of confidence to be able to be like, I don't need to
eat a Pop-Tart.
Yeah. Or fall victim to the scary ramifications of bullying. That's awesome for you. And that's amazing. But now how can we exponentially multiply that? And that's coming out of that, 5 years with the Bullying Prevention Task Force. I was always like racking my brain. I was like, how do we get this to happen organically? And so I went to the Philippines when my two elders passed on my own. But as I was going, I was like, but wait, maybe this should be just filmed in case there's something because I'm a hypocrite if I don't share my reality. You know what I mean? And so that's where that came from.
And where in the Philippines is your family from? Because it's big and very diverse.
Yeah, 7,641 islands. And most of my family right now is in Quezon City, which is quite close to Manila, Makati. And then as we tracked the family heritage, it really goes north. So into Baguio, and then up into an area called Ilocos Sur. So that also is in sort of that journey in the doc, which is very cool.
And I imagine there's just a whole bunch of different food customs that you were like, what is that and why and where did it come from?
Incredible food customs, and really the why behind the recipes, I think, were really beautiful. I mean, things that I thought perhaps they grabbed from the market before, but they were like, no, we just got it right over there. And we just were in the rice fields earlier. And, as the kids were picking up things in the rice fields, they have a little separate bag where they were putting sort of the snails that were part of this one particular dish. The history behind a particular dish that my Lola made when she worked in a boarding house for these law school students, which, by the way, my Lolo Monaco was a law school student and a lawyer. I never got to get to know him because he passed early, but that sort of inspired me. I got his name. My middle name is Monaco, which was his name. But they fell in love over this dish, and it's just awesome to hear about this dish. And there was the actual plates, these wooden plates from so long ago that we were, cooking on and eating on. But it's just interesting, and then the history sort of ties in. It's like, well, the English were there, sort of occupying, and they brought some, Indian folks and culture and dishes, but they didn't have the ingredients. So they kind of, instead of a curry, they went to the market and they got this peanuts sauce, and they created it from scratch. And it becomes this thing called kari kari that brought your grandparents together. That made your mom, that made you. And it's just like, what? So it's just cool. And, we're serving that for Filipino American History Month. We do a lot of off the menu things that come from the Philippines, from this stock, which is cool.
And apart from specials, has what you learned in the Philippines, has that been translated onto the food at Sunda New Asian?
Yeah, one of my favorites that we do is this, Kamayan feast. I know other folks might have, heard of this, but it's essentially, we do like a 30-foot banana leaf lined table with this procession of chefs that come out with like all the rice and all the, crispy pata, shrimp, chicken adobo, mangoes, dragon fruit. You get 15, 16, 17 different things, and it becomes something that everyone gathers around and eats with their hands. Which is kamay in Tagalog, which is why they call it Kamayan. I just think it's amazing. During COVID, we had to discontinue those. Were always sold out. And we went to a butcher block or a chef block format where you get one private one for your table, which is cool. And you get all these things. So it's literally a taste of the Philippines and sort of a backpacking trip through the Philippines, all in one, butcher's block of this, tremendous amount of food. That's really cool. And there's so many influences. You're doing a Chinese inspired egg roll, or you have this sort of Spanish, inspired longanisa sausage, or it's really a fun moment. I actually go to the table whenever I can with it because I'm so excited to tell all the stories. And there's so many other stories behind it that I think are fascinating that we talk about in the documentary and at Sunda all the time, that I know people share. Because I've had people come in and they know parts of the story that I'm like, wow, that's such a random portion of the party. They're like, I heard that, the Spanish made people use forks and knives. And then when they were there for 400 years, and that this was a secret meal behind the scenes, that only families shared with people they trusted, so we brought our friends and family that we trust, and we're having the trust meal. And I'm like, that, that's crazy, but that's kind of true. That's a pretty true situation. And, it's just cool. That's one of my favorites.
What a weird thing for the Spanish to obsess about.
Yeah.
Although, you see people eat with their hands and you're not accustomed to it. It's a little weird. And eating with your hands isn't easy. It's something that, like when I started eating with my hands, it might have been West African food, might have been Indian. I don't know. Like it drips down your arm and it's hard to get it in your mouth. Like it's actually harder than you think, especially since as babies, we did it all the time, sitting in a high chair.
Or the world. At one point, the world all ate with their hands. And it's, it's interesting that we've evolved to a point where it's uncomfortable for us, or we look down upon it. Some people look down upon others. And it's this, again, these are the storytelling moments. And the coolest thing about food is it brings people together in a way in which they, have an excitement, a commonplace, like, a yearning to like see it, feel it, taste it, learn it. So it's cool to see those differences. But yeah, I mean, telling these stories kind of opens up the landscape of conversations because everyone's background, I don't care if it's Eastern European, like there are so many fascinating things to talk about. And, if we could inspire everyone to go back and pull some of that forward, there'd just be a lot more celebration, acceptance, and excitement in the world.
Yeah. And in this soundbite world that we live in, trying to actually dig a little bit deeper than something that you can say in 20 seconds is tricky, but so rewarding. And now I'm just sort of thinking out loud, doing that while you're eating means that you have more time to kind of talk about it, because you're going to sit for at least 30 minutes, ideally 3 hours, and just have a meal and share and talk and eat and talk about the food, all of that.
The funny thing about the Kamayan meal is because you're eating with your hands and you're getting it, like you said, all over, people can't use their phones. So they actually now have to look you in the eye and have conversations like, forever until 10 years ago.
Wow. I never thought of that. That's genius. Otherwise you get crap all over your phone. That's
right. Good. Yeah.
And your clothing as you try to reach in and grab your phone.
Right.
Yeah, I attended one of your Kamayans. When was it? Like 2019, 2018, something like that? During Year Awards weekend, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I think that was 2018, 19, something like that. I think it was our 10-year anniversary of Sunday, in River North. And now we're opening another one in Fulton Market. Very soon. So that one in the meatpacking district, Chicago, Fulton Market, definitely a hot spot in Chicago that has really become, almost a culinary epicenter city of its own. It's just really neat and exciting, and we're excited to be there.
And you're also, you said, expanding to points south. Maybe.
Yes, we opened Sunda, Tampa, just a couple months ago, and it's fascinating how that city has grown up, because my entire life going to Southeast Asia to visit my mom's side, well, my dad's side was in Tampa, and so occasionally trying to escape the 20 below weather in the Windy City, we would sneak out, and I would just like, get some warmth there. And I never thought I literally listen, people around the country that are saying, oh, that sounds, St. Pete, Tampa, that's not the culinary capital or whatever. Tampa is a different city, and so is St. Pete. There's St. Pete's hipster now and has really cool. They both have really great restaurants. They have definitely a migration of so many from, New York, LA, Chicago, around the world coming there post COVID, and it's just been awesome. And to bring this type of food, sort of New Asian cuisine, elevated Southeast Asian, and these stories to that area has just been awesome. I mean, it's just, people are psyched, and it's been crazy packed because the city's exploding. And so it's been really rewarding and fun, and the staff is so awesome. I don't know. I'm just really excited.
That's cool. Yeah, as a New Yorker, when I think of Central Florida, I don't think cultural diversity, but there really is a lot. I was in Orlando, and instead of being at a theme park, I was downtown.
Yeah.
And listening to the different languages people were saying, talking, the housekeepers and so on in my hotel, I was like, oh, there's a Haitian, there's a Spanish speaker. There really is. It's a different, obviously, cultural hodgepodge, because every city has its own mix. But
yeah. It's awesome. I was at a table like 2 nights ago in Tampa, and this woman was like, I just appreciate this comfort food that you're sharing with us. It was the crispy pata. And she goes, there's a dish I'd love to, have you try. For you to come over to my, and have our grandma's version of this. And she was like, we're going to make you a whole meal. We're Colombian Cuban. And I was like, wow, that sounds delicious. That sounds so delicious. And she's like, yeah, there's an entire community here, and it's just, it's very diverse. I mean, I'm telling you, I know what people are saying. But we came to Nashville. We were talking about going to Nashville 10 years ago. We got here 7.5 years ago. People thought we were crazy then. People thought we were crazy when we started talking about Tampa 3 years ago. And there's some new cities that we think are the next sort of things that are going to pop, that we're going to go into and announce very soon as well.
You're not going to announce them now? I have to wait.
I love you so much that I got to give you something, because we go back. So I will tell you the city that I've got my eyes on big time, that looks like we were about to wrap up, but you never know, is, I think Detroit's going through a renaissance moment, and it's popping like crazy. I think I know it sounds crazy, especially as a Chicago guy that was taught not to like Detroit because of the Pistons and the Red Wings, but like back from the Bulls Blackhawks days. But I've been studying different cities that are just like going through some crazy, growth moments, and Detroit's about to just go nuts. And well, you'll hear about it more and more. I know people like roll their eyes every time I say stuff like that, but I think a lot of New Yorkers are going to flood Detroit, by the way, or at least restaurateurs. So that's just my thoughts and predictions right there.
Yeah, you're not the only one talking about Detroit. There's
not at all.
A lot of people kind of like, huh. And now every city has an interesting food scene. Every city of more than, say, 200,000-300,000 people has an interesting food scene.
Yes.
And there's so much opportunity, and the real estate isn't all locked up, and you're not competing with every other great restaurateur on the planet as you are in some of the bigger cities. So yeah.
So I think Tampa is a great example. No one would have ever thought it, but access to high volumes of growing folks in demos that like to go out. You have access to labor from all the folks moving there, especially the millennials and other and even younger. And then you have property opportunity where you can actually afford it. Because it's tough, man. It's the restaurant industry is getting tough. I mean, there's a lot of increases, and Sadly seeing a lot of folks, see that bottom line dwindle down to nothing and below. And it's scary. It's tough.
Totally. What a dark note to end on. But so let's end on a nice note. Food Roots, where can people see it?
Well, I would go to foodrootsfilm.com.
There you go.
Just to get the list of, we're going to constantly update it with new film fests. My social media, which is just my name, Billy Dec. I would love to know where people feel like we should bring the film, because I don't want to just do the greatest hits. I want to get into the nooks and crannies of like really great communities, and I'll go there. And there's a lot of things to talk about afterwards that have a lot to do with what we talked about here. Everything from food to the White House Bullying Prevention Task Force to, there's themes of identity, loss, mental illness, and other things that, is part of life. And I think, if this resonates with anyone, and they can always hit me on social, because I'd like to learn. I'd like to know, where to go with it. And then, Sunda New Asian.com is Sunda. And again, just appreciate you having me on, man. This is awesome.
I always love hanging out with you, Billy Dec, and I hope we get to do it in real life soon.
Real life. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I love it, man.
Thanks a lot.